we broke those down into more detailed, complicated pictures. The first of which involves some photosystems in the membrane of a thylakoid. So I start drawing phospholipids for a membrane. And otherwise, I need a protein here, a protein that I'm going to fill in with some green, because that's my chlorophyll. That's where I'm absorbing sunlight energy, or at least most of that sunlight energy. Again, some of that is bounced back, and that's why this looks green to us. Right? All other colors are absorbed, but I'm going to absorb light energy in the first step of this process. The purpose of that light energy is to give electrons enough energy that they can jump out of that chlorophyll and move their way down a chain of proteins. So I have this electron that's jumping up out and moving down a chain of proteins. And I just keep doing this over and over again with more and more electrons to create a current going through this membrane that can power certain functions, right? So I have more membrane here. I have something that I'm not going to draw here. I have some pumps that I'm going to power. I'm going to be pushing something across the membrane here, and it's going to use the energy of those electrons. Before I do that, though, I have to draw a separate little process here. I told you that water is going to be split and oxygen is going to be formed. But the reason why I'm going to split that water to make that oxygen is because water is actually made up of more than just oxygen. There's hydrogen. And then there's those half of an oxygen molecule, because there's really only one oxygen in water. But since I'm going to be releasing these hydrogen ions, I'm going to be losing electrons as well. And those electrons lost by water are what replenish that chlorophyll, keep this process going, right? You would ultimately run out of electrons that would be moving down this transport chain. But as long as water's splitting, right, I can replace those electrons lost. But I also provide hydrogen ions that can be pushed across this membrane. And again, I have these pumps that are pushing that hydrogen ion across, trying to make a really, really big concentration on one side. The next part of our picture, once those electrons get to the bottom of that transport chain, they actually have run out of all the energy that they had previously. So I actually have a second pigment here that can re-energize those electrons. So electrons made their way down this chain. Their energy was used to push hydrogen across the membrane. But once they get here, they have to be re-energized for the next step, because there's another transport chain, another chain of proteins over here that the electrons are going to travel down next. But in order to get recharged, you need some more light energy. So the electrons jump up and start moving down this secondary chain. Right? Yeah, finish my drawing of my membrane here. That's actually the toughest part of this picture, is to make it still look like a membrane. But at the end of this transport chain, something else happens, right? Instead of powering a pump that pushes hydrogen ion, I actually just catch those electrons in a high energy molecule. I'm going to make this molecule called NADPH from NADP+. And this molecule just catches some electrons. It actually catches 2 electrons, because that's how many electrons kind of move at a time. That's how many electrons came out of that water originally. But this energy molecule can be used to help me power those light independent reactions. So it's important that it's formed here. Otherwise, the last step in the thylakoids, right, if I keep drawing my membrane over here, I built that hydrogen ion concentration for a reason over here. Once I have a really big concentration of hydrogen ions on one side of the membrane, I can actually open up a channel protein. So more membrane here. And this channel protein is going to allow that hydrogen to come right back through the membrane, because the hydrogen wants to go from areas of high concentration to low concentrations. So instead of an active transport like I have over here that required energy, I have a passive transport here of that hydrogen ion. But although it's passive, it's rushing through, it's forcing its way through, right? It wants to get to the other side. So you can take advantage of that movement of that hydrogen ion. We talked in class how it was like a turbine, like in a windmill. So as that hydrogen ion flows through, you can make this thing spin. And this thing is actually also an enzyme and powers a secondary function where it's going to make a lot of ATP. So I've been pushing that hydrogen ion across the membrane for a reason, and the main reason is so that I can power the production of this ATP from ADP. This enzyme is called ATP synthase. Also going to pop up in my respiration pictures, so same enzyme, same thing, but it's just going to use this gradient. It's going to use that imbalance of hydrogen ion. As hydrogen ion flows through the membrane, you can make lots and lots of ATP. So I'm capturing light energy in both a ATP molecule, but again, that energy came from the movement of these hydrogen ions. These hydrogen ions are only on one side of the membrane because they were forced to that side. That pump that pushed them across the membrane was powered by electrons that are moving that ultimately got their energy from this light at the beginning over here. So I have these two separate photosystems. This is photosystem 2. Light energy from photosystem 2 ends up in ATP at the end of this process, right? This is a high energy molecule and it contains that light energy from the beginning. Otherwise, the other high energy molecule, that NADPH, gets its energy from this photosystem. Right, this is photosystem 1. I know they're named backwards, but I can't control that. But this light energy here ends up directly in this molecule here as it catches the electrons that are moving in my secondary transport chain. But at the end of the day, I have these two high energy molecules, this NADPH and ATP, that can go on and power the next step.